Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Irish Goodbye Business Podcast. As you know, on the Irish Goodbye, we like to speak to people who have had great careers, some challenges, but really grit and grind has got them through. And today I'm joined by a very old friend of mine. I won't say how long I know this man because he'll age us both dreadfully. But Tim Kingston, please say hello to everybody.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you, Carl. And we definitely won't mention how long we know each other. Just definitely wouldn't start it off well.
Yeah. The only thing older than that is some of the shirts I have.
Yeah, through that.
But so people won't know how I know you because over here in America, obviously you've never come over and seen me because you're not that good a friend.
Waiting for that day.
Yeah. But we do know each other since we're about 4 or 5 years of age.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm not going to ask you to recount your career from the age of 5. But quite how a Catholic kid from Ballybrack and then Dunleary ended up hanging out and being best friends with a Protestant Methodist kid, the Reverend son from Dunleary, is a myth to most people. Let's pick it up towards our teens when we both dabbled in college and didn't do a whole lot of that either. And one of the first jobs I remember having with you was washing pots in a restaurant.
That's right, yeah. Where was that? De Selby's in Dunleary, was that where it was?
Yeah. So how do you go from... first off, why don't you give everybody a quick sort of introduction to who you are and what it is you do?
So, as Carl says, I'm Tim Kingston. I'm currently Operations Director for Johnson's Service Group in Ireland, and I'm responsible for the production, maintenance, service and logistics for the Irish operation. So we deliver and laundry for both healthcare and hospitality across the island of Ireland. So I've been in operations in various forms for 30 plus years, primarily in the laundry industry, but took a slight detour in the last 5 years and went into the construction sector, for which I picked yourself and Morris's brains a few times. And then last September, was asked to go back into the laundry industry, an industry, to be honest, which I had no intention of going back into, but it's kind of one of those weird ones. It's almost an invisible industry insofar as nobody knows it's there until you don't have the linen to go on your bed or in the hotel or the hospital or all the rest of it. But it's one of those that's fundamental to the running of from the hospitality sector in Ireland, particularly where I've worked, although I have had some experience in Europe and elsewhere as well. But it's an industry, like I say, that gets into your blood. And while I enjoyed, for the most part, the 5 years in construction, it was one that I kind of jumped back into with a new company and new challenges, but still sort of the same things around the engineering piece, the service delivery, customer interaction, dealing with people, because it is very labor intensive in comparison to some of the other industries. But I guess I started off in Tipperary a while ago in the rag trade, back when you could manufacture things in Ireland. And it just happened that the company that I worked for at the time, as it was going out of business, one of the bigger customers was looking for trainee production manager. Started off in production manager, a trainee production manager, then went into shift manager, then various iterations of the company. Two of the directors left and asked me to come with them to set up a new company. Then I ended up going back to the previous company about 6 years later. And I say, after that into construction, and then to where I am now with Johnson's Ireland. So kind of a roundabout way of saying I'm doing the same thing for a long time.
See, you must be good at it by now. Well, I'm sure you agree with me, getting out of the construction sector is a godsend. I spent about 15 years in it, and I'd have to think very difficult to find a day I enjoyed in it.
Yeah, it was one of those ones to say it was a definite 180 for me, given what I'd done before. And now, having said that, there were certain parallels. I went in initially as business transformation manager, which was something I had to Google because I didn't know what it was either. And then within about 6 months, I was appointed as the operations director, responsible again for service delivery, a timber door company of all things, as well as fire rated steel glazing, installing steel doors, ironmongery, service delivery. And it was very interesting. The company itself was interesting in terms of how it was run. but the industry was also an interest. It was very interesting. It was a time where data halls and large office blocks were really booming in the last sort of, since COVID, it kind of picked up and then slowed down again. So it is a challenge, different, I suppose, to the residential side of the market in Ireland, which is, just they can't build houses quick enough. So it was something very different. It was something, like I say, I enjoyed. Perhaps the parts of the company that I was working for I didn't necessarily enjoy, but the business itself was an interesting one, and gave me, I suppose, a new perspective coming back into where I am now again in the laundry sector.
Yeah. So going from washing pots to washing rags to, I mean, you and I joke about that you wash rags for a living. We're going from everything from hotel linen to the linen that goes into operating theaters, right? So there's very high end and technical and very low end. But as you go through that journey of life, was there any advice that was absolute bullshit and you're glad you didn't take it, or you did take it and you had to learn the hard way that was horseshit?
I suppose you never die wondering. Sometimes you should leave things well enough alone, I think, is sometimes. But no, I suppose, getting stuck in, I think the one thing that always, the overriding thing for me is the communication piece. Listening to people, speaking with people. Whether it's on your side of the game in sales, and I've listened to some very interesting contributors to your podcast, far more interesting than me, talking about sales and marketing and things like that. And but communication is communication, and it's a people business, whether you're selling or whether you're producing or whether delivering or whether it's with service. I suppose the communication piece, I think you can never overemphasize that. Sometimes you can communicate the wrong things, God knows, but I think that piece you can never overemphasize. But I think sometimes people would, you get paralysis by analysis. Sometimes you just got to go with your gut on certain things, and that I don't necessarily think can be taught. It's just one of those things. Sometimes you can do a bit of analysis, but you got to go with your gut and the best information that you have at the time. And sometimes people will tell you, "Oh, hold off on this and hold off on that," and you turn around 6 months later and you make the same decision that you would have made 6 months before, but you've now lost a place in the market, or you've lost a customer, or whatever it might be. So I think sometimes, without answering your question really, you just got to go with your gut in certain things.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you invite too many people into the conversation, your horse turns into a camel. And what I mean by that is, a camel is a horse designed by a committee.
By a committee, yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, and it bogs you down. But I do agree, communication, you can't over communicate, but if you under communicate, you're set up to fail, 100%.
I think it's the bit to be clear. I was always told, don't leave any meeting over about 40 minutes is a meeting not worth having. And then don't leave the meeting until you're sure that everybody in the meeting has the same understanding. Because I've come out of meetings before and talked to somebody getting a cup of coffee or whatever, and three people have all in the same meeting, sitting side by side, have three completely different interpretations of what went on in the meeting. And so I think one of the things for me in managing meetings is be very clear, concise in the messaging, and then when you're leaving, sum it up so that everybody in the meeting, whether it's 2 people or 10 people, they all go out with the same understanding. Well, I'm doing this, you're doing that, and somebody else is doing the other thing, as opposed to we all going out and not having a breeze what any of us is doing.
Yeah, I heard a great phrase around that before. If you're going to show somebody something, especially in a meeting, there's the rule of 3. You tell them what they're going to see, then you show it to them, and then you told them what they just saw.
Yeah. And if possible, get them to repeat it back to you. So that way there can be no ambiguity, and no, I thought you said this, or I thought I said that. And I suppose again, it's around the communication piece, that everybody is clear on the outcomes, because, and like I say, meetings for any more than about 40 minutes, I think are relatively speaking pointless. You need to get in, get out, get the job done, and move on, rather than overburdening people with too much extraneous information that doesn't actually help them achieve whatever it is, the goal that they're trying to work towards.
100%. Is there any time you've made a mistake that turned out to be a blessing, whether it was a learning from that mistake or the mistake turned out not to be as bad as you thought, or honestly turned out to be the right decision. You just weren't making the right decision at the time.
Some might say going into the construction industry for 5 years. But I was taken on that one, and I only joke about that because I did enjoy that time. It was a strange decision, say, going into a sector that I had no experience in other than listening to yourself and Morris. That was about it, and looking at cranes. I learned an awful lot in it, I suppose, good and bad. I probably developed a few trust issues along the way for the 5 years, but I think learned a lot around, how you're dealing with people, how you're interacting, whether that's with customers, architects, or whether that's, standing on a site with the QS screaming at you because this isn't going the way he wants, or it's not the price he wants. So I suppose there's lots of decisions there that you would look back on and think, well, wish I hadn't made that, or wish I hadn't done this. But I think the overarching thing for me is if I can look back on any decision that I've made and say, well, I made it with the information I had at the time. It was the right decision as I saw it then with the information I had at the time. Then you can stand over that, have the courage or convictions to go with it. There's nothing I hate more than somebody who reverses out of a decision and they don't have the courage or the convictions to stand over it. And let's say, if you've made the decision with the information you have at the time, all the information you had at your disposal, you got to back it and go for it. And, 9 times out of 10, that will work out. There will be the often time that something happens that you didn't have the right information, or you just made a bad call, but you should own that too. And I think, people are far more willing to have that little bit of an understanding. If somebody says, well, that's the decision. That's why I made it. It made sense at the time. Now it's a crock of SH1T, but you got to own that too. And you don't go back and say, well, I didn't do that. Or you try and wriggle out of things. People lose respect very quickly. People aren't stupid, and they can see through that. And they have much more respect for a fella who says, well, he's owning the decision and he's moving on.
Yeah, I must say, one thing I like to do is I like to give good news and bad news the exact same way, early and honest.
Yeah, and people prefer it that way because they know where they stand.
And you can fix something with somebody who's told you, look, I messed up here.
Yeah, and you're likely to take criticism from somebody if it's constructive. And if somebody gives you a bollocking, but it's coming from a base of, well, actually, this is what you did, this is what you shouldn't have done, and it's constructive, I take that all day long.
You can learn from those.
Exactly. And, like I say, if you've made the decision with the information you had at your disposal and for the right reasons, without sounding too evangelical about it, that's where you should be pushing.
Yeah, which goes back to the communication piece, right? Because if it's communicated correctly, you'll have most of the information.
Yeah.
So look, I know how your journey has come because it was as misguided and as hard fought as mine. We weren't great in school. I think we can both agree to that.
Yeah. I think there was different paths to get there.
Yeah. We were equally as bad in college. I think the only thing we did well together was drink and play rugby.
We did, yeah. We were. I think that I remember playing on a team. I think it was a team that Hamo spoke about as well once. About we were.
So we came out of retirement.
Well, yeah, but even before that was a drinking team with the rugby problem. But yes. Yeah, did one of them well and one of them not so well.
Well, look, I've a saying that that's not my saying, but it's a saying I really like, is that hard work beats talent every time. I think you're not just talented, but I think you're one of the grafters in life. I think you're one of the people who has gotten where you've gotten because you'll show up on a Saturday if it needs showing up. You don't ask people to do things that you wouldn't do yourself. You'll be the first one in, the last one out. You were like that on the training pitch. You're like that in life. So tell me what that looked like to you, because to other people it's inspirational, but to you, I get the sense you're not doing it to inspire. You're doing it because it's a mindset.
It is, and maybe it's because the way I was brought up, or God knows I spent enough time in your house as well as my own. So two sets of parents, but I think I would take an inspiration from Morris and people like that who out there and driving. Morris back in the 80s, getting in the car and going to the UK and flogging his guts out. And, God only knows he didn't need to see me at the weekend as well when he came back.
He still complains about it.
He still complains about that. I'm my own dad in different sphere altogether. And clearly, I'm not a Methodist minister, so I didn't follow in the family business. But, that you get up and you get on and you do it and you face it. And I suppose I would expect everybody to do that. So I don't give myself any credit for something that I think everybody should do. And I would be a firm believer in, you expect other people, things from other people, you've got to give them as well. And you lead by example. And obviously one of my great heroes, not that much older than me, but passed away now, Anthony Foley in Munster, would have always led from the front, wouldn't have been the most talented rugby player ever to put a jersey on, but always drove it, always set by example, never gave up till the final whistle. And I would be a firm believer that, don't, as you say, don't ask people to do things you're not prepared to do yourself. There's certain things you mightn't be able to do yourself, but that doesn't mean that you don't sit alongside somebody. I mean, even the other week, there was a piece of kit down and, for all the good I was doing, I was in there helping this guy put this motor back on. And, that's the sort of stuff you should be doing. No, I was probably getting in the way, God knows, but, whether
hold the lamp and hand the wrench. Like you
exactly. And so, I would always say, from an operations director point of view, I work alongside a team of really good people from operations and logistics and stuff like that. And I'm the person in the background trying to tie all the bits together and give the support when they need, but also have enough cop on to, right, I need to get out of the way and let these people get on with it kind of thing. But I would always think that, lead by example. You don't always have to do it because, like I say already, you mightn't be able to do it all, but you show up and you do it and you're there. And you don't expect from others what you wouldn't give yourself, whether that's effort, whether that's talent, or whether that's knowledge, but you got to push it.
I like that. So if you were walking down the street and your 20-year-old self saw you now, what do you think would surprise the most about you?
Less hair than I wish I had. No, I think overall, am I happy with where I've ended up? In the main, there's always decisions that you would make slightly differently, or you would do something slightly differently, or should have gone back to college earlier, I should have done this, or I should have done that. But I think,
shit, were we meant to go back to college?
Yeah, I got that memo. Did you not get that memo? Yeah.
Oh, well, I never got it.
It's all overrated anyway. No, I think, joking aside, I think you never stop learning. You never stop, whether that's in college doing courses, whether that's, listening to podcasts, whether trying to make yourself better. And I think the 20-year-old me looking at me now would probably wonder, why did he not go abroad? Why did he not do the things like you did or whatever? And times change, and I wouldn't change that for the world. The experiences that I've had working both here in the UK and on the continent for short periods of time with the companies I've worked with have been really, really good. But no, I suppose, it's like I say, reasonably happy. Would I like to be a multimillionaire and flying around the world? Of course I would, but you can't have everything, can you?
You're never going to be multimillionaire. You're married with 2 daughters.
Well, so I've got 2 kids, and they're well able to spend whatever money I have. They're well able to spend it for me.
Well, then let me ask that question from a different perspective, because I know you're too humble to say what you'd like to say about what your 20-year-old self would say about you now. So what would you like your 2 daughters to do differently to you? And how would you like to see them take what you can pass to them and make it better?
Well, I'd like to make sure that they went into something that they were interested in. I mean, I've got your goddaughter is about to leave school now, and she's weighing up her options in college. And the one thing I would say about it is, don't go to college just to say you've gone to college. Go to college because you're doing something that you want to do, whatever that is. And I'm 51. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. But I think it's important that whatever they go into it and they give it a good shot. You drive it through. Like I say, I wasn't shooting the lights out when it came to intelligence, but what I did shoot the lights out of was I gave it a go. I gave it a push, and you can learn things in many, many different ways. And I suppose from that point of view, I would hope that they would see that, as you said already, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And, you got to do that. And you got to set your stall out. This is what I want. Absolutely be curious, but be driven and back yourself to do something. And, very often, you walk into a job there and, you don't know what you're doing when you start, but I went for the job and then I figured out how to do it when I got it. I seem to recall you having that conversation with me more than once. And that's the kind of the drive that I would hope that they see from me, that they see from you, that they would see from others. And, back yourself, go and do it, be curious, but, whatever you do it properly and put your heart and soul into it.
Yeah, I've always said, and there's only one part of what you said there I don't agree with, because sometimes I think if you're not really interested in college, but you need a degree to get through something, go do fucking philosophy, tick the box, and then do something. But you say that you're interested in, like don't go and do economics if you don't like numbers. You know what I mean? But go and tick the box if you need to tick the box to get it.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a fair point.
But any job I've ever had, in my mind, I have to be in the top 2%. Right? If I'm stacking shelves, if I'm on a building site, if I'm selling software, I have to be in the top 2%. That if I'm not, then I'm letting myself down. I got to go and find something else. Because if I can't be in the top 2% by working hard, well then fuck it, I can't do this job, so I shouldn't be in it.
Yeah, and that's the integrity piece, that's the competitive piece, and it's internal competition. Because a lot of the time you're not in competition with anybody else. You just think you are. But if you don't push yourself, then you're not going to get the best out of yourself, or potentially look at opportunities that may or may not come down the track.
But I also love that you mentioned, I'll leave me out of it, but my dad, your dad, and a few other people who are influential, because you're not solely influential. You are the sum of the 5 or 6 people closest to you. So I say this to everybody I mentor, the sum of the 5 closest people. So if 2 of them are lazy and bitch all the time, you will bitch and be lazy 40% of the time.
Yeah, it's funny because I saw that quote on LinkedIn the other day, and I smiled because I know you said it before to me and then on the podcast a few times, and it is true. And if you're hanging around, and even in a production facility now, which will remain nameless, that I was in last week, there were 3 people on the front of an ironer line feeding in linen, and 2 of them were hitting their targets and 1 of them wasn't. And, that's only going to go up one way. The 2 guys on the right are going to go, well, he's only doing 150. Why am I doing 250? And slow down. Or the 150 guy is going to go, I better up my game because the other 2. And so you do, by process of osmosis, whatever it is, you do kind of absorb what's going on around you, the positive and the negative, and you treat it is important to try and.
I know the fact it was 2 on the 250 and 1, I think we're dragging them up. And this is where I think we should bring. I mean, I'm only half joking with this, but I think we should bring bullying back into the workplace. People aren't working hard enough. You should be allowed to hit them with a stick.
Yeah, constructive bullying. Yeah, I'm not sure HR would agree with me, but
you did use a sign behind your desk. I remember when you were down on Pottery Road. I won't mention the company. Punishment beatings will continue till morale improves.
Until staff morale improves. Yeah. I had another one there. In Latin, nil satis nisi optimum. Only the best is good enough. And I suppose both of those together are equally true.
So look, is there a belief or a mindset that's got you here, wherever here is for you, right? I look at you as one of my oldest, closest friends. As you mentioned, I'm godfather to your daughter. You've been an inspiration to me in my career by the way that you get in, you're dogged, you'll just get it done. You will put personal joy aside for the greater good. There's not everybody will do that. Now, I've been pretty bad at that in my younger career. My later career, I've gotten better at it. But is there a mindset that's dragged you through? A mindset that when you're just knee deep in shit and you're like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, what mindset drags you through that?
I suppose there's an element of stubbornness. There's an element of wanting to do the job properly and getting stuck in. And, work is work. You can enjoy it and all the rest of it. The clue is in the name. It's work. You got to work at it and you got to drive it on. And anybody who thinks that it's just going to be handed to them on a plate, well, good luck if it is. And let me know if there's a space in that job, because, you have to work at it. Particularly, you're not doing a 9-to-5 job. And I'm working in the, essentially in the service industry. Our customers work 365, 7 days of the week. They expect us to do the same. So, whether I'm technically on holidays this week, but I was answering emails this morning and doing a few bits and pieces and answering a couple of phone calls because A, I have an interest in it, and B, you'd rather do it now and keep ticking along than come back in a week's time and have 1,000 emails and God knows what's come along. So you got to have an interest and a bit of pride in what you do. But I think it is a bit, you can do all of the fancy stuff you want, but it comes down in a lot of instances to sheer bloody mindedness. Just get it done. I'm not going to get beaten by this. Something's happening, whether that's self-inflicted by one of our own staff, whether it's an external force around competition or just market trends or whatever it is. But you just got to keep pushing and like I say, sheer bloody mindedness, just get on with it and get it done. And, whether that's getting it done yourself, leading by example, or pushing, cajoling, whatever we want to call it, others on the team to get it done, but also holding people to account. You can definitely do that in a constructive way and a proactive way. You should never be afraid to hold people to account. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I expect you to do A, B, and C. And if you don't, I want to know why, because you're letting other people down. And that, I suppose that is the bad and all as I was a rugby player and every other sport I ever played. But team is, you're again, not sounding too evangelical, but you're working for the greater good. You're working for, we've got a monthly target, we've got a budget to deliver, we've got stuff to get done, on all those little small KPIs which lead up to the big, the EBITDA at the end of the month, the end of the quarter, the end of the year. And you're driving all of those things and you're holding everybody to account while equally holding yourself to account.
Yeah, there's two things you said that I really love. One, you said it was self-inflicted by one of our lot. That just shows your mentality of teamwork. You didn't say self-inflicted by him, by her, by them. It was our lot. So you're owning the issue.
But you got to own it as a team. If you want a success, celebrate success.
The way you structured it just showed your mindset, right? And it's not a mindset everyone has, Tim, and it's why I'm calling it out. And two, the one things I love about rugby is, and having played alongside you and others, you have to trust the person inside and outside of you that they're going to do their job.
Yeah.
Right? So as you said, if I'm not doing ABC, you can't do XYZ. And that's one of the things I did love about sport, and it's one of the things I took from sport. And it's really helped me in my career as being part of a team, is understanding sometimes somebody needs a kick in the ass, sometimes they need an arm around the shoulder, sometimes they need that criticism given to them, as I call it, compliment. You have to give them the compliment first. You're doing real well over here, Tom, but you're dying on your ass over here.
Yeah, and that's the different dynamics of a team. As you say, on a one day it's the arm around the shoulder, the next day it's the size 10 in the arse, and you're trying to get the balance. But I think if people see that you're consistent in what you're trying to do, that there's an end game in sight, and that when they get the credit for the good stuff, and there's nothing worse than working with somebody or working for someone who takes credit for your work. That is one of the most demotivating things I think possible. 100%. I'm always very careful, I hope, that I don't do that. That you give credit and never be shy about promoting. I work for a man who, he was always promote. Give this person the credit. Don't be afraid to promote. And, that succession planning, the training, all of those different things. Don't be afraid to do any of those things, because that's how you build a team. And people are far more accepting of the constructive criticism if they know it's coming from A, from the right place, and B, that you equally got the credit there the day before yesterday when you delivered on this thing. So if you're consistent in how you're doing it, I think that's how you drive a team. And as you said already, you own the successes and the failures equally.
100%. So come here, tell me, I'm asked this in two parts. Have you ever felt like you were entirely in the wrong room, and what did you do about it? And the second part is, when did you realize you were actually doing it, not showing up, that you were bringing value, you were bringing expertise that perhaps some others couldn't? So you can answer those in either order.
I suppose when I came through with the previous company I worked with in the laundry industry. You know, I came through from a trainee manager, production manager, shift manager, GM, and then head of operations into operations director. I suppose there was an element of imposter syndrome then at that stage when I go, how the hell did I wind up here? I remember having a chat with the person that I mentioned previously and some other people who you kind of brought it around to, well, actually, if you weren't good enough to be here, you wouldn't be here. You're not here by a fluke. And I suppose that's not to sound in any way cocky, because, as you know, I wouldn't be, but, you know, you're only there because people think you're good enough to do the job. And if you do the job, you'll still be there. And if you don't do your job, well, geez, you won't be there very long, and you'll be found out quick enough. So I suppose initially going into a room and sitting down and looking at that, and as you know, I'm not one for titles or anything like that, but you're going, how the hell did this happen? You know, and then you suddenly realize, well, actually, people think I'm good enough to do it. I better back that up, and I better repay their faith in me. And also, I'm here now and I don't want to go backwards. So I suppose that was certainly something initially when I came into that role. And then even going into construction, I'm going, you know, standing on a building site in one of the largest construction sites in Dublin, going, how the hell did I go here? Because I haven't the first clue what I'm talking about here. And some of it you have to wing it, some of it you have to bluff it, but then you go back and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. You go, well, actually, either this is something that I actually good at, or I'm the luckiest fella in the world and I'm bluffing it every time. But you start building it up, and all of a sudden you get that knowledge by, for whatever reason, you're able to do a job. And I suppose so from that point of view, yeah, I have felt being in rooms where I felt, you know, I'm completely out of my depth here. But you can do one of two things. You can either quit, or you can learn on the hoof and get on with it. And whatever else I ain't no quitter. So you just got to get on with it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's nothing to add to that. Look, there's a real joy here in talking to my oldest friend. I know you far too long. You're my brother, essentially. We grew up in the same house. But I've just written down the words that I've pulled out from what you're talking about. So it's the communication. Expect what you give it a good shot, do it properly, work is work, integrity, be decent to people, and consistency. It's not hard to see the thread running through there.
Yeah.
Right? There's a solid thread of being decent to people, treat them right, do the right thing, be part of the team, communicate right, and work like a dog. As the two lads from Cork who won the gold medal in the row,
pull like a dog.
Yeah, exactly. So here, first off, I want to say thank you for joining us. We've one more question before we go.
Thank you for having me. I've been judging you long enough. I figured I had to do it now.
Yeah, you did. You owed me at this stage. But look, Tim, it's been a pleasure to see your career grow and grow. It's a bigger pleasure to be your friend.
With encouragement from you along the way, it has to be said.
Well, look, if I'd be a shit friend if I didn't, wouldn't I? But so the last question we ask on this podcast is, as we get up to finish our pints and leave, there's a napkin on the bar, and you have to write a bit of advice on the back of that napkin before you leave. What's the advice you leave for the next generation?
I suppose it's very cliche, but don't die wondering. You know, give it a go. And I've seen that in so many times and things I've done, things like you've done, other people have done. You know, back yourself and just do something, you know. But along the way, try and bring others with you. You know, try and give a little bit back. Don't give back to the people who don't give a fiddlers. But if you see someone who's working hard and has commitment, you know, you can't buy that. You can teach a lot of things, but, you know, if you got the right attitude, you know, so try and bring people with you, try and encourage people. But I suppose the key thing is, you know, don't die wondering, just be curious, give it a go. And if you, at the end of the day, you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, well, I did the right thing. I'm happy with the decisions that I made in relation to how I conducted myself in that job, or before I left the job, or whatever it is. If I can look at myself in the mirror and go, yeah, I can live with that. Well, and I don't think that's too bad. No, there's an image I saw recently, a lovely quote on it that has, you know, the graveyard is full of people thinking they had more time. Yep. Well, Tim, thank you so much. I know I've taken a lot from this, and I'm pretty sure a lot more people than me will. So thank you.
And yeah, best of luck in the career. And I'll see you at Christmas. So get the creamy pints ready.
No doubt. Talk to you soon. Take care.
Be good. Take care.
Cheers.